What if a Microsoft tool, one that was meant to protect Windows machines, actually opened them up to attack?
That single unsettling question? Well, that leads us right into our story, the ghost server. You know, every good cyber thriller, it always starts with just one single unexplained signal, a whisper in the static. And for a team of security researchers, that whisper was this address right here. They just stumbled upon it while monitoring their own network traffic. Now, this is an Azure Blob storage account. You can think of it like a plot of digital real estate in the cloud. But here's the thing, this property was totally abandoned, up for grabs. And that was the central mystery. Why on earth was a legitimate, digitally signed Microsoft tool constantly phoning home to a server that was completely empty, a digital ghost town? It just didn't add up.
So their next move? It was simple but absolutely brilliant. They decided to follow the signal. The researchers started chasing these digital breadcrumbs by doing just one thing. They bought the abandoned server for themselves. They basically set up a trap and just waited to see who or what would come knocking.
And it didn't take long. Within hours, requests started flooding in from all over the world, hundreds of them. And every single visitor left the exact same digital calling card in the server logs. The user agent was always the same, UHS mailbox. That calling card, USH mailbox, it led them straight to a file called usvsc.exe. Now, this wasn't some piece of malware, this was the Microsoft Update Health Service, a totally legit program signed by Microsoft itself, running on countless enterprise machines. And its whole job? To speed up security updates. The very tool that was supposed to keep machines safe was the one making all these suspicious calls. And this wasn't just a one-off mistake. The researchers found a really predictable naming pattern for these servers, from payload prod 0 all the way up to payload prod 15. So they checked all of them. And out of those 15, 10 of them were completely unregistered, so they claimed them all. And just like that, they were suddenly watching this global river of thousands of devices calling home to their servers.
Okay, so knowing what was connecting wasn't enough. They had to understand why. It was time to crack the code. And this is where the investigation really starts to feel more like planning a digital heist.
By reverse engineering the service, they mapped out its logic, and it turned out to be incredibly predictable. First, it checks if a device is on a corporate network. If it is, it fetches a file to see if it should take any orders. Then, it downloads a device-specific policy, and finally, it looks for a command to execute. It's a clear step-by-step logic that an attacker could easily follow and, manipulate. And while they were digging through all that code, they found it, the key, a command called ExecuteTool. I mean, you don't have to be a security expert to guess what that does, right? This was the golden ticket, the potential entry point for remote code execution. But of course, there was a catch, a pretty big security hurdle. The tool was hard-coded to only execute programs that were digitally signed by Microsoft. A pretty smart defense, right? But the detour they found? Well, it was even smarter. They thought, instead of trying to run our own unsigned code, why not just find a Microsoft-signed program that's already on every single Windows machine and hijack it? So it all came together in this 5-step attack chain, both methodical and, frankly, devastating. Step 1, claim the abandoned Azure server. 2, craft a malicious policy file. 3, target that ExecuteTool action. 4, use that action to hijack a trusted program, something like explorer.exe, to launch your real payload. And step 5, you've got complete remote code execution on the target machine. Game over. So the exploit worked perfectly in their lab, but that wasn't the end of the story, not even close. Now they had to figure out just how many machines were out there, in the wild, silently broadcasting this vulnerability to anyone who knew how to listen. It was time to unveil the true scale of this silent network. And what they found was staggering. Just by listening on those 10 accounts for only 7 days, they saw over 500,000 requests. This was traffic coming from nearly 10,000 unique corporate networks. And of those, almost 3,500 had devices that were actively asking for instructions. So what's the final count? 40,973. Let that sink in for a second. That's how many unique devices could be individually identified and targeted. Every single one of them a potential foothold into a corporate network. All because they were running a security tool that was calling out to a ghost server.
With an exploit this serious, this widespread, the final chapter is always the most important one: locking the door. This is all about fixing the flaw, sure, but more importantly, it's about learning the lesson.
And thankfully, this part of the story happened exactly the way it should. The researchers followed a process called responsible disclosure. They reported the whole thing to Microsoft on July 7th. Microsoft confirmed it 10 days later, and by July 18th, they had taken back ownership of all the abandoned accounts. The hole was plugged.
But you have to ask, why did this happen in the first place? Well, it all came down to a core design flaw, a misunderstanding between transport security and message security. See, the developers trusted the connection. They assumed that because the server belonged to Microsoft and the traffic was encrypted, the data inside must be safe. But what they should have been doing is verifying the message itself, signing the actual commands. That way, it wouldn't matter who owned the server. The device would only trust a message that was cryptographically proven to come from Microsoft. The lesson here? Trust the message, not the messenger. And that brings us to the end of our story. The ghost server has been exorcised, but it leaves all of us with one lingering question. In the vast, ever-expanding digital world we've all built, how many other digital ghosts are out there, just waiting to be found?